Coming up on the Daily AI Show.
Now, thinking models are a little more expensive to use and they have a higher latency, meaning that they take a little bit longer to respond because they're thinking through the problem step by step.
So we have core planning components, your goal definition, your resource assessment, and then your implementation framework, which would be milestone structure. Like what are your measure milestones that you want to look at?
Now, as a foundational point of how to think about interacting with models, I think that's a very good skill.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is January 2nd, and what a January 2nd it is. Today we're going to talk about using the O1 models, the planning models, to achieve a goal. So in 2025, we have this amazing opportunity as people who engage in AI that we have the thinking models. So Gemini Flash 2.0 experimental thinking, or thinking experimental, maybe it's just thinking now, which you can access through the back end of Gemini. We'll go over all of that. But so Google Gemini has a planning model and ChatGPT has a planning model. That's the O1 series. And it's something that is designed to spend a little bit more time thinking about what you've asked for, thinking about the prompt and being able to create something comprehensive. And today we're going to talk about that because if you are like us, we have some thoughts about what we think 2025 should be like and what we would like to receive or achieve in this time period. So, hello. I'm going to toss it over to Andy while I get the chat set. Hey, Andy.
Good morning. So, yeah, we now have available to us thinking models. Now, thinking models are a little more expensive to use and they have a higher latency, meaning that they take a little bit longer to respond because they're thinking through the problem step by step. But they dynamically allocate the amount of that thinking compute time so that if you pose a very simple question to O1, the OpenAI thinking model, it might come back and say, I thought for 1 second. That was all I needed to figure that one out. But there are other problems that you can put in front of the thinking model that it might take 30, 40, 50 seconds of thinking before it feels like it's done the iterative calculations of possibilities and thought through all the processes to get to a response that it finds satisfactory and is ready to present to you. So, frankly, these thinking models are applicable to and probably should be reserved for more difficult problems that require such step-by-step thinking. So the typical ChatGPT user probably doesn't need to use O1 for anything other than the most complex reasoning questions that you might have. And I'll give you some examples of those things that you might use it for. But let's just say that in general, the thinking models break things down into smaller steps and then iteratively refine the result. So they're doing the question answering multiple times and evaluating the responses that they generated before they arrive at a final solution. Okay, well, where would you need that? Well, complex math. How many of us are asking complex mathematical problems? For example, geometry problems that require multi-step calculations, such as, okay, I got to determine the area of the overlapping geometric shapes and then figure out what that intersection has as import to the next step. And I don't think I've ever asked a question like that. But the Math Olympiad benchmark problems are showing that these thinking models do much, much better than the prior models do on that sort of thing. If you're in science, some of our listeners may be, if you're in science, physical and chemistry problems that apply multiple principles simultaneously, those things would require this advanced reasoning, if you will. biology questions. One that comes immediately to mind is if you have a host of possibly unrelated, but possibly related symptoms that you're experiencing, and you want to have medical reasoning, diagnostic reasoning applied to that, then go to O1 or Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking to ask that question. Like, here's all the symptoms that I have. And now think through this step by step and tell me, what the possibilities are for possible sources of those symptoms. This this won't just generate a simple response, but it will test multiple diagnoses, and it might think for a long time before giving you a final conclusion or summary of the possibilities of that.
So when we apply that to something that people might want to achieve in 2025, it's going to give us that same comprehensive approach, right, Andy? So that like we're not I mean, yes, a possible goal that I might have in 2025 is that I achieve the diagnosis for the symptoms that I am experiencing, but the same pattern could be seen in this is my current state, right? This is what's happening now, and this is where I would like to be. And then you're going to give it like the symptoms that you're experiencing and the resources that you have. Like this is the amount of time I have. This is let's get a little concrete is what I'm thinking. Andy, do you have a goal, or Jyunmi, do you have a goal that you were potentially going to use um to achieve something?
Sure. Excuse me. So I was more looking at these thinking models or these reasoning models as are they at the point in which we imagine that what AI is supposed to do for us, right? Um, and they are working towards that. I shouldn't use the word slowly. They are working towards that in leaps and bounds, really. But just to be clear, let's set expectations here. You're not going to use O1 to solve a problem for humanity. Not yet. A part of it for sure, and that's what they kind of the capabilities that leads us to other versions like what O3 can do, and those potentials. But what it can do is it can break down those those larger questions that people tend to ask, which makes it a little easier to interact with. And that's the biggest thing, right? Early on with a lot of the models is you had to be very particular on the way in which you framed the request or the prompt, right? So with these reasoning models, everything that you give it, it can start breaking those down to the component and get you a more in-depth answer, right? Worked out answer. So as an example, and I think Andy mentioned a bunch of these, but as an example, I was looking for possible use cases that people could really apply to their lives. And we talked about the math, we've talked about the science, and those kinds of things. But in business use cases, I wanted to see, was there any hurdle to that a lot of people run into, especially if they're running their own business, right? Or they're starting a new business, because the startup business realm is sort of where I keep my headspace a lot of the times. Is how can we lower the barrier to start up a new business? What are all the essentials that you need? What's important? What's not important? And what are tools and resources that you can use to really get it going? So, so in this case, uh, the reasoning models really help with breaking down all of those components of business that you're not really aware of, or you don't really have experience with. And you can think of these as like departments, right? We're talking HR, strategy, even IT and technical things. What are the components that you need? And this kind of goes to that concept of the one person, $1 billion valuation company. And I think that's where these reasoning models or these thinking models really shine, is building towards that concept. So, so one of the examples that I pulled up was On the business side, it was how to build an effective strategy versus for your business. Product fit or product design, that was another aspect. Uh, any if you think about it as asking the questions that you don't know what questions to ask, that's what these are really good at, right? So, like, here's this concept. I need to know everything about this. I don't know anything about this. Help me understand this. And in its process of breaking things down, you learn from it as you're providing the answers as it starts thinking. So I always this is a technique I picked up from Beth where let's just have it ask you the questions, right? Um, as you're thinking through this process, please ask me for for additional information. Because that's another one of these things is a lot of these models are especially like O1 don't really have access to current information and stuff like that. It's always what it's been trained off of. Um, and using that to fill in the gaps, and that takes you to the next step. So I think that's where the true power comes from for these models. Now, on the creative side, which is the other headspace that I have in terms of, hey, we wanted like for this show, what are things that we can do to improve the production value? What is important to or the general watching trends of viewers? How can we provide value? That's my biggest question is like, how can we always provide all of our subscribers and viewers and watchers the most value? And not necessarily what's the latest gizmo or, whiz bang effect or whatnot, but how can we provide the greatest value to everyone? Right. And how can they achieve those resources? So those kinds of larger questions is you take advantage of the thinking or the reasoning or the really crunchy bit of what these models can do. And that's kind of the way I look at it. Now, coming up with the right prompt to engage that might take a little more work because I will say some of my early questions into O1 when it came out, it was answering in a second, and I was like, okay, I'm asking the wrong question. So that's something that I think would be valuable to everyone. So, best do you
So
have insight on that?
yeah, I'm gonna say let's sort of chunk these down. I would say the number one step in using these models to achieve success is know when you're ready to use the model, right? So for me, in that interview process to get at like what is my clear goal statement, what what are the resources that I have, those kinds of things, that I need personally to do in a different model. So I use 4.0, I use advanced voice, right? I have that conversation because it is my way of engaging in it. Often you've heard me say, I just turn it on and say, I have a project, ask me questions about it. For this, I have a goal, ask me questions about it. And what I'm doing in that process is trying to get the AI to ask me for enough information that I can create like a dossier for my goal, or I can create like, okay, so this is the clear goal statement. The Daily AI Show, we would like to get the Daily AI Show to 3,000 subscribers by January 31. That is a clear goal statement. We're at 24, almost 2,500. And in order to do that, now we need to like give the information about, okay, so we have this number of shows, we have these outlets. Right now, we're not posting our content outside of YouTube. So those sorts of things. That for me is an interview process so that I don't have to both interview myself to think about what the information needs to be and also provide it. That's just a shortcut for me. So step number one would be know when you're ready to use the model, and that would be after a clear goal statement, and you have the rest of the components to give the model the highest chance of success. Is that ring true with you, Jyunmi, based on what
I
you
think
said,
so.
and Andy?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that really highlights the importance of that. Also, it I'd say there's once we have a little more alignment on the models, like I'm sure we've seen it with all the different forms of GPT, 3.5, 4.0, where they become the base model for most everyone. I would imagine as resources and um, new models and new techniques come out that O1 or a reasoning model along the O series could be the new base model. But and this is something that sort of along the lines of what you're talking about is uh, OpenAI in particular has said that they are working on methods or features to do auto switching, right? Switching between all the models, and to a certain extent, they've implemented that, right?
Yeah. I
Um,
feel like I got a notice about that like 4 months ago.
yeah,
Like, and it was like, "Hey, just so you know, we might switch models, right? Turn this feature on." I turned it on. I can no longer turn it off or on. Like, I am thinking they're doing this.
right.
Uh, oh,
Definitely in the beta testing phase of these kinds of things, and this is a completely side note, but the AI companies do releases and their hype cycle a little differently than other tech that we've seen out there. So probably because they're on a much shorter timeline of as features comes out, and it seems that the competition in terms of attention is getting a little heated there. I always want to keep their jockeying for position or whatnot, but that's a side thing. Um, but yeah, it's that switching thing makes the model choice, or as that develops, will make the model choice less of a conscious choice, effort that you have to spend to choose which process. So it'll be nice when we see a more collective, like this becomes the open AI experience, right? It will choose the model that you need to do all these processes. Now, as a foundational point of how to think about interacting with models, I think that's a very good skill because remember, we are at the clear platform agnostic period. Everybody's coming out with great stuff, and you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, as the saying goes, because things are changing, new features are added, um, you know, and we talked about it on the show, like Claude 3.5 Sonnet has been excellent for us in just getting a more nuanced or developed output, especially when it comes to content development and things like that. So, versus some models that are better at just cranking out code, or other tools that are better at cranking out code or doing the math, or those kinds of things. So we're gonna see, or to
Don't
illustrate my point, there's
Yeah,
just
but
so
don't
many
give
options out
Claude
there.
3.5 Sonnet short shrift on code. It's
No, no,
probably
that yes,
it's
yes,
the
sorry,
preferred.
I didn't mean to say it wasn't, right. You're right, you're right. There it is excellent for that as well. But again, my point just being that we're in that platform agnostic phase, and so just having the ability to approach any model in its, its best practices or use case scenario, and being able to think that out and know how to access those models, that's great foundational skills.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
right.
So
So, Andy,
speaking of
yeah, because
speaking of models, I think it'll be useful for us cite some of the differences between O1 and Gemini 2.0 thinking. Um, And before I do that, though, let me just say that one of the exercises that I think is aligned with what you were talking about, Beth, in terms of goal and planning for 2025, since we are here at the beginning of the year and you want to, achieve great things, I'm sure, is the O1 model is part of the ChatGPT interface. And if you're Plus user, that is, you have an account there and you have been paying for it, then there is memory about you in OpenAI. And you can now select the O1 model. And the O1 model, compared to O1 Preview, has vision. So here's a use case example that you can use for planning your 2025. Many people are doing a thing called a vision board for 2025. It's kind of an interesting approach to collecting images that kind of are evocative of what it is that you want to feel like or become in your future. Like, what's my vision for what life is like in 2025 and beyond. So imagine taking a vision board exercise that you've done or do one, and assemble those images and then present it to O1. And then also ask, as some people are doing now as an exercise, and I've seen some AI influencers on social media sort of showing this capability, have O1, the thinking model, respond to the question, what is it that you know about me? And I want you to evaluate that in terms of where I can improve myself and moving forward, what I can do. And here's my vision board for what I think. But I want you to think back on what it is that I've said before and what you know about me, and try to identify some areas that I think or that you think I should work on in 2025. A reasoning model like O1 can handle that kind of task, but the simpler models cannot.
Mhm.
So the combination of vision, of thinking step by step and applying multiple step reasoning to that will give you I think a very much more satisfactory response to that complex question, and maybe provide you some insights that you wouldn't have thought about if you were just going to sit down and say, here are my goals for 2025. Tell me how to reach them, which is an exercise that most generative models can handle. But the one where it's evaluating you, asking you questions, and then generating something that also incorporates some visuals that you've provided, that's the province of a thinking model like O1. Now, Gemini 2.0 is from a line of models that are natively multimodal. So it also has the ability, and not only the ability to look at images and reason around those images, but it can handle all the other modes as well. So it may, though I haven't played with it, I'm kind of caught over here in the OpenAI world. Uh, it may be even more capable on that. And there are some other differences. One of them is that the latency of 2.0 flash thinking is smaller. That is, it responds faster than does O1. And it has I found two different sources. One suggests that the Gemini models have a much larger context window, but it appears that O1 actually has a larger context window than does flash thinking. So if you needed to provide it with a lot of information in order to apply that reasoning capability, you might find that I think it's 32,000 for Gemini 2.0 is 128,000 tokens for O1. And then do you guys have some thoughts about other differences between O1 and Gemini 2.0?
Well, yeah. One of the things that I just want to say, and we probably should have said it at the beginning of the show, with O1, it's only available if you have the Plus subscription or higher than that. There are also two flavors of that, as Andy mentioned. There's O1 regular and O1 mini, and those are limited in your number of queries to them, right? Like number of back and forths. With O1, you have 40 for the month, I believe, and O1 mini, you have 40. No, maybe O1's for the week. I will find out the actual information while we're on this show, but they're limited. And O1 mini is for the day. You have 40 for the day, I believe. And Gemini doesn't do it the same because it's not actually, it's an experimental part of their process. So I suspect it's also limited in the back end. But as far as I know, they haven't come out and said, "This is the exact number that you can, engage with back and forth." Typically, what happens on, Gemini's limited models is you'll get a message like, "You're just about up," right? Like, you don't have more, and then you'll get a message that says you've exceeded the allotment and come back in, whatever period of time that is.
So another difference is that Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking explicitly shows its reasoning process without prompting. It will tell you what it's doing as it's doing it. You can get O1 to do that if you prompt it to do so. Like ask it
Mm.
specifically to, as you go through your step-by-step reasoning, please show me by presenting output in the chat about what each step is and then what you're doing. So, but it doesn't normally do that. It does that sort of behind the scenes. It's step-by-step reasoning, and then we'll come up with the answer.
So, Amazon Andy has a great comment. I just want to say the reasoning or thinking functionality is essentially looking at the computational space and having a clear outcome objective in that domain. If the model has appropriate data, is where it shines, and that's totally, yeah. That's also one of the secrets here. Thanks for wording it that way, Amazon Andy, as opposed to our AI Andy right here.
Well, I mean, this also goes to that concept of providing the data, right? Like you set up, Beth, where uh where your initial session would be to discover everything you need to tell the old one model in another model, and then providing all of the information that it properly needs to give you a great response. I wanted to highlight, Andy, what you were talking about, the asking it about yourself and that whole memory aspect. uh, I I think this is a really undervalued, um, ability or function of these models, and this kinda goes to what, both of you been saying about providing the data that it needs. I think there's a huge amount of, for lack of a better word, productivity barrier that you can overcome by having the model understand how you work. Right?
Mhm.
You know, 'cause a lot of us in any working environment now, if we cannot communicate effectively and we aren't working or we don't have an alignment of how we're doing processes, right? This is why you create process sheets and, SOPs and things like that, so that you're all working the same way towards a goal. Right? So that's the same thing that you're gonna do with these models is have it understand how you are working or how you want to work, and that will increase the value of your time spent with it and the output that you're getting. So I think that's a key point to really to highlight for everyone is, hey, just get it on the same page as you and sky's the limit.
Right. And that's one of the things that I think, um, having your having your process that you like to engage with, right? And again, for me, that is a voice interaction that is eliciting the data that I need to give in order for them to have enough information to plan the things out. And so generally that's like a concrete goal statement, something like, we want to grow the podcast, but a concrete goal statement is 3,000 subscribers by the end of January, right? So now that has constrained it into a clear metric. We can totally measure it. We have a limited timeline, which helps create the environment in which to to have the motivation because it's not urgent, but it's kind of urgent. Um, and so then the next thing is to identify any resources that you are currently working with so that it understands your sort of tech stack or how much time you have, right? Like what are your resources? Um, Then likely what it's going to give you is an implementation framework. And that's something that, again, in this back and forth, like you can ask for that. If you are someone who wants it broken down into specific 15-minute increments, or you want 3 things that you're going to do every day, right? So those get at Jyunmi's thing of how you like to work, right? So you are going to give that as your reset as well, or sorry, as your resource as well. You're going to talk about that. Let's see. So these are things that came up in a search that I did. So we have core planning components, your goal definition, your resource assessment, and then your implementation framework, which would be milestone structure. Like what are your measure milestones that you want to look at? And then like an organizational system, like how do you want to progress this? For us, it's likely we create a plan up front and then we work it throughout the day, or throughout the month. But it may be that your goal is something that you need to build individual components and then boom, it happens, as opposed to like an iterative everyday kind of thing and you'll see results. And then you want to give it success factors. And you want to give it success factors because you want the success factors, right? It is so in that context, we want I mean, now I'm saying it. Hey everybody, welcome to my goal. I'm setting the goal for the Daily AI show that we're going to reach 3,000 subscribers by the end of January. The success factors for that would be the subscriber count on our channel, but it could also be the number of people who attend the live, the number of comments, right? So I could have some success factors that are not literally the statement in the goal, and that's something that O1 can also help with. Hello, Jazz. Jazz has made his second appearance on the Daily AI show. Okay, so Andy, what do you think about that sort of laying out? You have done way more management of projects than I have.
Well, I have often used models, but not yet the reasoning models, the deep thinking models, the ones that can, do a deep logical reasoning for this purpose. But I have done some projects in development where I use the large language models to lay out the entire product requirements document and the full set of objectives and steps that are necessary in order to arrive at a fully functioning work product in code, even though I'm not a coder. So I do have some experience with that. But I would need to try that now with O1 to see if it does a better job at that than even the earlier models, because I've been working in this domain with the kind of thing that I've shared with us together on the AI show. I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and the models that I was using originally, I was astounded at how effective they were at understanding the world of product management, and then doing the detailed descriptions that are necessary to provide to an engineering team. Well, wow, now I suppose that O1 could be given even more complex requirements at the sort of the high level, just in terms of text or conversational cues, and then generate, based on its extensive training and its reasoning capabilities, a very coherent and thorough and effective work plan for almost anything that you want to do. If it can do that for code, it probably can do that for whatever project you have in mind. So project management and product management, those are two domains that there's been a lot of information delivered to the large language models. And so it'll be very easy, I think, to transition to an effective conversational assistant that can really guide you progressively through all of the things, including asking you questions to refine what it understands about your objectives, and then deliver a very coherent and effective plan for you.
So,
I want
Andy,
to mention one other quick thing,
oh,
which is that, again, I haven't used Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking, but it can reason on audio and video, which
Yes.
O1
Claude.
cannot. So if you've ever thought about doing things with the starting data being a YouTube video, where somebody's done a 1 hour YouTube video and it has a lot of information in it, but you want to drill into that and compare it to some other video, that's the kind of thing that a Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking can handle.
right.
It's I haven't tried it, but uh, the thinking process, that reasoning process, is very important when you're trying to do comparative analysis. Like, oh, find all of the sort of talking points in this video and what the thesis is of this commentator's point of view is, and compare it to this one. That can be done with these thinking models in a way that the other ones would really struggle with, I believe.
Yeah, that's a really good point, is the multimodal aspect. And I'm personally excited about flash thinking is because of that and how we can apply it to DAS, right? We can analyze our videos. We can compare our videos to others and things like that. We can get that golden set of information from each of our videos, without having to go back and interpret the transcripts and go through that whole process and diarize the whole bit. So that what I'm hoping is it'd be like and this is the difficult thing right now for any of these models. You can't just say, "Hey, go take a look at the entire of YouTube. Compare our videos to that and tell us what we need to do specifically to make our videos perform better than those other videos."
Mhm.
You can't do that. Not yet. But we can do it all more on the micro scale to give us insights and whatnot. You can't go to O1 and just say, "Hey, go solve a global hunger crisis for humanity in a sustainable way."
That reminds me of another difference between the two, and that's the terminal training data date. O1 has a much earlier training data cutoff. I think it might even be back in 2023 or something. Uh, and whereas Gemini 2.0 Flash and the full range of the Gemini models, I believe, is up to August of 2024.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that's a good thing to highlight because what that available information until the models are able to access additional information, whatever tools, whether it's access the web or whatnot, you will have to provide the data for that intervening time. I did want to highlight a comment from Justin here. Um, and he was saying that I wish the reasoning models had a tab like Perplexity where you could select options like general, academic, or creative uh, to be at the focus. I think that would be a great add-in or feature for any model. There's these little quality of life things that you could use to fill in the gap, right? And this is something that I've talked about in the past is please use what exists today to fill in the gap until your model can do it by itself, right? This is the whole copy paste function. This
Yes.
let's
Yeah.
replicate the exact quote I said. You can just simply copy and paste that into a canvas. Simple things like that. So yes, these quality of life things I think would be great. A great way to help people get to where you want to get to. And they should be fairly easy to implement. Of course, I don't know all the details, so maybe it's not, but I think it should be. But the thing that I wanted to point out specifically about this comment is I think there might be an option to use custom instructions um, to replicate those kinds of requests. Uh, by clearly having your set of custom instructions that say you always want to act like this or have a focus like this, these kind of contextual requests or triggers and things like that.
Mm.
Now, it would be nice to simply have additional instances of custom instructions, which I think would be a tiny little tweak on the OpenAI side for ChatGPT. It's like custom instructions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you just turn on which ones you want, and then you set up what your work experience is going to be.
So that's where we are in interacting with the models. But that custom instructions tip is really good because while the systems don't have those 1, 2, 3, you have 1, 2, 3 and can cut and paste. So you could just have a document. You could also it's also a way to get your conversation with O1 or O1 Mini to behave like a custom GPT. I still have not seen that I can upload a file to the full O1. I don't believe that's possible, but I can copy out my custom instructions right now and save them because that's the general custom instruction. I want it to understand when I'm using it like just generally, but I can update that. So the benefit of a custom GPT is that you write it, you save it, it sits in the system. You can do that manually if there's some specific goal that you want that you're going to come back to. It's a bummer, but it is possible. And that in the way that Gemini is set, you get a system instruction for every new prompt. So, and those can save. The back end thing is that it's free right now, so there's no cost, and often there's no cost to use the models in the aistudio.google.com. That's the back end of how you access these models. But you are they are using that data to train, right? That's your agreement with them. If you're using it for free, they're going to use your data to train it. So
I want to call out one other feature that
Cool.
I think is useful in O1, and that is there's a reasoning effort parameter. So you can set the level
Mhm.
of thinking that it's going to apply to your problem. Now that's just a question of cost efficiency because you could give it a problem that you don't have a lot of stake in, and it's going to burn a lot of compute, trying to chase that problem. But there's this parameter. Reasoning effort is the parameter, and you can select that at a lower level and kind of contain the level of thinking. That's this pre-processing and iterative examination of the possibilities in the latent space out there that it's going to pursue.
Awesome. So let's see. So we were going to share the secrets. Let's popcorn the secrets so that we can wrap this up. The first secret was know when you're ready to use it. So make sure that your goal is clearly defined, that you have the success metrics that you want to use, you've shared your resources, you understand what those are, and everything that you think the model will need to be able to accurately plan something for you, help you plan something. So that's the first piece. The second piece is to understand which model you want to use based on what kind of goal you have and what kind of access you have to AI services. um, that's the second piece. Help me. What are the other secrets that we just laid out?
Uh,
Uh,
go ahead.
So we're just doing the verbal recap. So the third piece is assessing, like choosing the information that you want the model to have about you outside of your goal, right? So Andy was mentioning the ChatGPT, I think it was Andy, has a memory of you, right? Fills up that memory. You can also go and look at it. So if that's going to impact the information on how it's going to generate your plan for your goal, you can edit that memory as well. You can also, memory is another place where you could set something like a custom instruction, like you can put information into the memory specific that you want to do. And I guess the other piece is to understand the limitations within the model, in terms of the number of instances you have to go back and forth. And that's my 4 secrets. Does anybody have another secret they want to add in?
I like those.
Ah.
We're not about secrets here. We just give it all. We throw it out there.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's no gatekeeping. Everybody gets all this information. Um, hmm, so everyone's homework for this week is to go out and apply each of those secrets and let us know what your results are, and we can do a nice wrap up to review your outputs. How's
Yeah.
that sound? Yeah.
Drop it in the comments, send it to the Daily AI Show at gmail.com, or go find us at the Daily AI Show.com. And thanks. We got a great show for you tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the new rules, 2025 new rules for prompt engineering. So we hope that you will come back for that show. Monday, we did our prediction show this Monday for like the real predictions. The next predictions that we're doing on Monday are like wacky pie in the sky. So dream big and join us for that and share your like really. Let's do it. Like,
Great. One fact check quickly is that Beth, I think I heard you say that you didn't know whether you could upload a file to O1.
yeah. Can you now?
Yeah, absolutely, you can.
Oh,
With
awesome.
Vision, and you can add files and everything. Yeah. It's
Oh,
their
yeah.
main model now. It's the default model that you'll be presented if you are using ChatGPT, and you can select if you want. You can select 4.0. But O1 and O1 Mini are their main models, and most of their chats are being sent to those.
Wow. Wow. Because that means that the main models that they're offering you are their limited ones.
Well, like in the drop down
Like-
right now on ChatGPT, the drop down has for model selections, it lists 3, and then you have to click to see more models to look at the old ones, right? It's GPT 4.0, great for most tasks. O1 uses advanced reasoning, and O1 Mini. And I think like if you're just a free user, you're getting 4.0.
Yeah.
But if you're a paid user, it's defaulting to O1, or maybe mine's set to default to O1.
It may be because mine is to
Yeah.
4.0. So that's interesting. The other thing, as we're like remembering all the things that we should have said on the show, it came up in the chat as well. Claude doesn't have a separate reasoning model, but anecdotally, people have compared the results that they get from O1 with Claude, same kind of thing. I have a goal, I want to reach it. That Claude does very, very well. So it's not a specific reasoning flavor, but it's maybe baked into the whole thing. And Perplexity also has a reasoning option in what Justin was talking about, being able to ask, and you get access to O1 Mini with those things. All right, that's really the end. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you at another show tomorrow or Friday or next week. Have a good one, everybody.
Aloha.